Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. The time has come. The Boomsday Project card dump. Basically, I got like 50 some cards to review for you guys. I'm gonna do my best here. Some of these are actually very interesting cards, even those that have very little text on the card. Most of the cards from this expansion have a lot of impact in how we will play Hearthstone in, well, honestly, about a week from now. So it's very important that we have some understanding here, and I hope I bring you that. My overall thoughts on seeing these leftover cards, I suppose, and they're not really bad ones, by the way, is that it looks like mechs are going to be real, okay? From time to time, Blizzard tries to go on a limb, coming up with a new tribe or new deck type, a new type of synergy within a class, and honestly, almost every time it fails to really take hold of the meta. I can tell you from the mechs you've seen and from the mechs you're going to see in this video, mechs are real, guys. Mechs are totally nuts. They're literally the new zoo. They're the new aggro. They're the new mid-range. They're possibly the new combo. Mechs are just crazy strong. And, well, you'll get to see what I'm talking about here shortly. So let's get to it. Okay, we got Dynamatic. Dynamatic is, I kind of compare it to the Bomber effects, but that's because I play Arena. If you just play Arena, it basically is that. It hits minions, so not characters, but it avoids other mechs. So if there's a whole bunch of mechs and then your opponent plays a non-mech, this basically is 5 mana, deal 5 damage to that one thing. So it's a potentially very powerful effect, but it's like mech only for constructed, and it is going to be a hilarious RNG card for Arena because as many mechs as you want to put in your Arena deck, it's just not going to happen. You're not going to avoid, making a consistent mech deck. It's just not going to happen. And more mechs to come. We got Bronze Gatekeeper. This is kind of what I was talking about. This is a card that looks pretty crap. You can compare it to like Silverback Patriarch, which is the infamous absolute trash tier 3 mana 1/4 Beast Taunt. But it's much better than that because it's a mech, and mechs like to magnetize on top of one another a lot, and magnetizing the taunt effect is very important, and it has a little bit extra health, and a little bit extra health means you can have very efficient trades. So this is a pretty good taunt minion. If you have nothing else, if you have other stuff, you can get value trades, or you can get value trades plus the taunt effect. It's a good card. People kind of made fun of this, but honestly, if this was like a 1/6, I'd lose my mind. That would be broken. If this is a 2/5, that would be broken. This is as good as it can be without it breaking the game for the 3 drop slot on the mech decks. Okay, this is as good as it can be. So it is not a bad card. Skaterbot of another mech. We're going to have a lot of these mechs. One thing to consider is there are too many mechs to just put into your deck. It's not like Goblin versus Gnomes where you can just take every single mech, put it in your deck. That's your mech deck, and you have 20 slots for other cards. It's not how it works here. There's way too many mechs. So you actually have to choose between them. And even though a card like Skaterbot might seem really, really good, and honestly, I think it is really, really good, it's magnetic and it's rush. So you can basically get another push on the board if you're starting to lose. Disadvantage is it uses up a card. So yeah, you might have some card advantage issues if you're playing too many cards like Skaterbot. But the point I'm trying to make is there's so many good mechs coming up and you cannot play them all. There's not enough space in a deck to play them all. So while Skaterbot is really good and it's a 1-drop, really good 1-drops, oh my god, those cards break the game, right? Well, there's other really good mech 1-drops. Yeah, really, like a lot. So, I don't know. It's hard to really say if cards like these are definitely going to see play. There's a lot of competition, even for the mech tribe. Druid card. Legendary Druid spell. So Druid has received some serious love this expansion, but with the uprising of a lot of the tempo, aggro, and mid-range decks from the mech archetype, maybe it's what Druid needs to just survive. I'm not convinced Druid will be the best deck in the game in any format. But, I'd love to be wrong because I'd love to play Druid, especially the combo Druid. Anyway, mana. You like mana? Well, you're going to love Floop's Glorious Gloop. That's right. So whenever a minion dies, you gain 1 mana this turn only. So the idea is you play this before you trade anything, and whenever you lose a minion, you get a mana, and whenever your opponent loses a minion, you also get a mana. So, you're going to have to kill off 3 minions for this card to be better than Innervate. You have to kill 2 minions for this card to be as good as Innervate. But that's not that hard to do. A lot of the token Druid decks can manage that extremely easily. If you can get any kind of rush effects, that would be a lot easier than you think. If your opponent is playing just with a lot of minions, you can maybe just cast Swipe and gain mana from casting Swipe. And from what I'm seeing, a lot of people are going to play a lot of minions. There's going to be a lot of Zoo decks out there, I believe. So I think the card looks really good, and I think the card is better than it looks. Obviously, it depends on the meta, but I think there's a chance this will see play in just about every Druid deck. We have some more mechs here. It's a 4-mana 4/4, and the Battlecry gains stealth until your next turn. So you might look at this card and it's like, man, that's a piece of shit. And, standalone, you'd be right. This is kind of crap. This is like Stranglethorn Tiger while it's like half asleep. So it's not anything great, but it's a mech, and it has stealth, and it has even stats. So all those things put together make it so it's a very strong candidate for magneticism. And anything you magnetize on this is going to have a very powerful effect because it has pretty fair stats. And you're typically going to get that rebound on the board with a card like this, well, because it has stealth its first turn. So a card like this, if it wasn't a mech, it would be trashed here. But it is a mech, so it's actually pretty good. Druid card, it's going to forward the Trent archetype, or the Trent archetype. I don't know what it is anymore. Tending Tauren. It's a 6-mana 3/4. Stats suck, but you can get 2/2 Trents, and that's a strong effect because there's some decent amount of synergy with that. And if you are playing decks with Trents, Treants, whatever, if you're playing a lot of them, then you're playing kind of like a token Druid deck. And if you're playing a token Druid deck, you have the flexibility to buff your tokens and possibly push for an additional 6 damage. So at face value, the card doesn't look that good, but it's a very fitting choose one effect. It's one of the best that I've seen. Both of those cases are extremely strong when played in some kind of token-based Druid deck. So it's probably better than it looks, and I think it looks pretty good already. Mechano Egg. Yep. 5-mana 0/5 mech. Death Rattle, summon an 8/8 Robosaur. So 8/8 Robosaur is probably a mech as well. So the idea is if your entire deck is magnetic mechs of all kinds and all that shit, a 5-mana 0/5 is actually somewhat threatening. Seems kind of dumb, but yeah, it's kind of threatening. It's a mechanized egg. You can magnetize things on top of it. It's the easiest egg to buff in the whole game. So that makes it very threatening, and you get the Robosaur when it dies. So this card looks ridiculous to me. But obviously, if a lot of people are running hard removal, if a lot of people are running silence, and they might be, because a lot of people are going to be playing magnetic mech decks. So it is as good as the meta allows it to be, but at face value, this card is crazy. Speaking of crazy cards, we have another crazy card, and it's a 1-drop, and it's a Paladin card, and it's a mech, and damn it, why does Paladin have to get all the nice stuff? So I only caught this card on my second, look through the cards, just as I was prepping up for this video, and I'm like, whoa, what the hell? I had to post it on Twitter. This card's ridiculous. This is totally mental card, guys. This is a 1-mana 1/3, which if it had no tribe and no magnetic, we know is playable in standard almost at all times. 1-mana 1/3, do nothing at all, is typically good enough to see play in standard formats. Now, it's also a mech. So you can get your magnetic pumping Mechazod, whatever the hell, start being built up right from the start of the game. The fact that it's a 1-mana 1/3 mech is just beyond ridiculous. All right, let's just put that out there. The fact that it's a 1-mana 1/3 mech and has magnetic, I think this card is game breaking. I think this might be one of the strongest cards in the entire expansion. It's just totally insane. It's maybe the best turn 1 in the game, and it's a good mid-range card. It's a good zoo card. It's a good late game card. If your opponent has a big minion and you have a minion that's not as big, you can probably play this and trade up. And for 1 mana trading up, that's outstanding. This card is crazy. Crazy. So there's going to be a few more cards like this one, believe it or not. And this is why I've been saying that the mech archetype has definitely taken off. Then we have Weapons Project. This is kind of like the double-sided spell for Warrior. It's a 2-mana card. It gives 6 armor to both players and a 2/3 weapon to both players. This type of effect is really nice. I think it's one of my favorite ones. It really goes to show what Warrior is good at. Warrior is good at controlling the game and upping its health. So if you gain a weapon, you can control small minions. And if you gain armor, you gain health, basically. Better than health, even. And if you give your opponent a weapon, you're typically not playing small things. If you're playing the control type Warrior, you're playing large things. So, your opponent having a 2/3 weapon against large minions is worth a hell of a lot less than it is for you to have a 2/3 weapon against your opponent's small minions. It's really good, right? Also, if you're playing a control type deck, you win the game when your opponent runs out of cards typically, or runs out of tempo. So if you gain armor, that's great because it lets you get to that stage. If you give your opponent armor, his win condition is often not the same as yours. Also, if you give forcefully your opponent a weapon, you can essentially remove the weapon they're currently equipped. So if your opponent has a very powerful weapon, you essentially can use this card as a form of weapon removal. So obviously, if everyone out there is playing control decks, this card is not that great. But trust me, there's been like one time ever in the history of Hearthstone where everyone's playing control decks. So basically, this card is amazing. I love this card. This, just on a personal preference, might be one of my favorite cards from the upcoming expansion. We have Spirit Bomb, which, it kind of sucks. It's 2 mana, so it's an efficient removal. You deal 4 damage to a minion, and your hero. Yeah. So there's obviously some synergies with taking self-inflicted damage, but that's a lot of self-inflicted damage. And we often talk about how powerful Warlock is because it has the capability to bounce back in health. Well, one thing those decks typically do is not take a hell of a lot of self-inflicted damage, which this card certainly dishes out. So this seems like a very misfit card to me, but who knows? We have another 1-drop. This is not a mech, but it's still a 1-mana 1/3, and the effect is actually beneficial. You deal 5 damage to your hero and you gain 5 armor. Obviously not playable if you're at 5 or less health, but if you're 5 or less health, a 1-mana 1/3 is probably not going to help you out a whole lot. Otherwise, it allows you to heal and make use of an otherwise weak hero power if you're playing Priest, or perhaps it allows you to use healing if you're a Paladin, perhaps, and you have strong tempo. So this is a good tempo 1-drop. And if you're playing a tempo deck, you typically don't take that much, hero damage in the early game. So it's pretty good. It's a very well-rounded card. I can't say this card's going to break the game in any way, but I really like it. I think we'll see some of it. Don't know where yet, but it won't be like a deck-defining card. Nether Soul Buster. It's a 3-mana 1/5 demon, and the battlecry gains 1 attack for each damage your hero has taken this turn. So if somehow you manage to, suicidally take like 15 damage, this guy's going to get like plus 15 attack, and that's kind of hilarious. But in the more normal cases, you can just maybe do a tap and play a basically 5-mana 3/5 take 2 damage draw card. It's like, okay, right? Obviously, you can push that with more synergy, but I don't think that's strong enough quite yet. We'll see, though. Soul Infusion, another Warlock card. It's 1 mana that gives the leftmost minion in your hand +2/+2. The leftmost minion in your hand is the oldest minion in your hand. So a card like this, it's not going to work in a control deck because often you have to save cards that counter your opponent's stuff. So this is very much a Zoo Warlock card. Is it a good Zoo Warlock card? Yeah, it's a pretty good Zoo Warlock card. And the next card here, Doubling Imp, has some synergy. So if you pump up a Doubling Imp while it's in your hand, you play it, it gets the double effect of any kind of hand buffs, and there's not a whole lot of Warlock hand buffs. So a little bit of synergy there. That's kind of cute, and maybe you'll see play in the Zoo decks, but I look at these cards and I'm like, wow, those are really good. But then I think about it for a second. I'm like, wait a second. These decks are competing with MECH Zoo. Are these going to really compete with MECH Zoo? That's a tall order, man. That is probably not going to happen. So I imagine Warlock playing a lot of mechs. And if they're playing a lot of mechs, I don't know just how valuable these cards and these synergies will become. We have a legendary here. I think this card's pretty awful. It's a 4-mana 5/6 with stealth. And after your opponent plays a minion, you become a copy of it. It's kind of a card that counters maybe some control decks, but it's just absolute garbage against everything else. So it's kind of like a Mirror's, but if your opponent has a board clearer, he can kill it. But if your opponent can't play a single minion, it's a 4-mana 5/6. Is that good? Well, I can't say it's crap, but we don't even call 4-mana 8/8 Mountain Giants insane anymore, right? So this card is very far from insane. It's just only good if your opponent only has big minions. If your opponent only has big minions, then you're getting, a fairly large tempo swing. But there's very few decks that have that, guys. Even control decks that have almost entirely big minions, well, a lot of them run Doomsayer. So you play this and you get Doomsayer and you're playing an aggro deck. How do you think that's going to work out, right? When you're playing against another tempo deck, another mid-range deck, another aggro deck, another zoo deck, this is not getting 4-mana value. So I think this card's actually pretty damn awful, but I'd love to be proven wrong. Looks nice, at least. We have the Explodinator, 4-mana 3/2 mech, and it summons 2 Goblin Bombs. The Goblin Bombs are 0/2 dudes. They are mechs, and when they die, they hit your opponent in the face for 2 damage. I think they are pretty good because it swarms the board with mechs and does face damage at the same time. So I think the card is all right. I think it's actually quite strong, but again, there's going to be a ton of mechs that we're going to see, and you cannot play all of them. So as a comparative measure, I think this card is fairly average. Test subject, possibly Inner Fire Priest is coming back. It's a 1-mana card, but it's absolute garbage alone. You want to play it with, health boosting effects, and then the effects that equalize or possibly swap the attack with the health. So you want to do that because you basically try out a combo for free. The main weakness of, Divine Spirit, Inner Fire type of priest decks is that you need a minion that can go face to turn you combo, or else your guy gets killed by hard removal, and then you don't have your combo pieces anymore. So to set that up can be very difficult. This allows you for not a risk-free, but a lower risk tempo combo setup. You can just play a whole bunch of cards on the board on this guy, and if your opponent has hard removal, you got a refund on the cards. That's the idea. Do I think that's a good idea? No, I think this card's pretty garbage. Extra Arms, however, is also pretty weak, but I think maybe a bit more interesting. It is a minion buffing effect. The More Arms is basically the same thing. So you basically get this card, you play it, and you get another card, which is 3-mana +2/+2. So if you compare this card to like Sound the Bells is just a lot better just about every single time, because you're mostly looking for a health stack effect when you're buffing something, and the mana efficiency really puts Sound the Bells ahead of Extra Arms. The fact that you can have a 10-mana turn with Sound the Bells is a lot stronger than Extra Arms. But Priest, at least the new legendary, if you cast something on it, it like duplicates up. So, maybe that's kind of cool, I guess. I don't know. Seems to work pretty well with that. Also, I want to say that Priest with health buffs is a lot more dangerous than Paladin with health buffs. So it's a little better than it looks, but it looks fairly weak so far. Bomb Toss, Hunter spell, deal 2 damage, and you summon a 0/2 Goblin Bomb. The Goblin Bombs, we know they're mechs, and we know when they die, they deal 2 damage to face. I think this card is better than like Arcane Shot, which is 1 mana, deal 2 damage. You can hit face with this, so you can play kind of like a face mech Hunter. And if you have other magnetic crap, you can eventually get that Goblin Bomb out. It can honestly be a tempo pushing 4 face damage Hunter spell. Is that good? Oh, you better bet your ass that's good. That is really good. It's just, again, how does Hunter mech deck compare with the other like 8 classes mech decks? So it's very difficult to predict that meta, but as a standalone card, this card is really strong. Astral Rift, add 2 random minions to your hand for 2 mana. We've seen a few cards like these, and we probably will see some more, where they're kind of like draw 2 cards, but it's like draw 2 probably pretty crap cards at a discount of 1 mana. Instead of drawing 2 for 3, you draw 2 crap for 2. So, I don't know. I don't think any of these cards are going to break the game in any way, but it's probably alright. Secret Plan, discover a secret. I think I've seen this in like custom cards and stuff. Yeah, sure, I like it. And we have another Hunter card here, the Necromechanic. It's a 5-mana 3/6, and your death rattles trigger twice. So it's been like, 4 or 5 years now. This has power crept quite a bit over Baron Rivendare. Baron Rivendare has more health but a lot less attack, while Necromantic costs an extra mana. It also has the added bonuses of triggering death rattles that are not necessarily only from minions. You can have weapon-based death rattles or something like that. And in addition, the Necromantic with its stats can actually defend itself properly, which is pretty good. And if you're actually playing a lot of death rattles and you have a death rattle themed deck, Necromantic, well, can be played twice because it's not a legendary. So the added consistency is very valuable. We see that there's a lot of those 0-2 Goblin Bomb creating effects and stuff. If there is some way for a hunter to just dispose of those cards all at once, maybe with like a Direwolf Alpha perhaps, Direwolf Alpha, Necromechanic might actually be a devastating ending face combo for hunters. Who knows? Research project. Each player draws 2 cards. So this is, again, one of these project cards where it has the same effect for both players. I love these effects. It's just Mage struggles to take advantage of it. Mage's sustain is okay. It's not like Druid level, it's not Warrior level, so to play the mill game is fairly risky compared to some of the other classes. But if, again, a lot of people are playing combo, a lot of people are playing control, it might just be a very good way to draw cards, and you might be playing some kind of burn face mage, which has popped up from time to time, more often than I'd like even, to a point where you drawing 2 cards that potentially deal face damage is a lot more beneficial than whatever your opponent might be able to counter your hand with. So that's, again, something to consider. Flark's Boomzooka is the Hunter legendary spell. So you summon 3 minions from your deck. So the cards are consumed. They are not copies. These cards are consumed. And they attack enemy minions, and then they die. So yeah, it looks horrible, and honestly, at 8 mana, I think it is horrible. But the idea behind this card is that you're playing extremely powerful late-game death rattle minions, and, you know, you're basically cashing in the death rattle effect of cards that are otherwise very difficult to play. And I think maybe that is actually somewhat legitimate. I wouldn't write this card off completely, but it certainly scares me at 8 mana. Even Hunter, with all its anti-aggro tools, I don't think it's making it to 8 mana if you're playing like a death rattle themed control deck, because I think the aggro game in the upcoming expansion is going to be intense. Shaman spell, Beaker Lightning. It's a 0-cost spell, deals 1 damage to all minions and overloads you for 2. So yeah, it's kind of crap standalone, but we know there's like spell duplication effects, there's spell healing effects. There's a lot of crazy crap that interacts with spells, so being able to have this card on 0 mana is probably better than you think, but I still think this card is terrible. Brainstormer, we have a neutral card that forces you to play a whole bunch of spells and potentially is really good. We talked about Hand Mage maybe being a deck. You know what things mages like to keep in their hands? Spells. So if you got like 6 spells in your hand and you play this, it's a 3 mana 3/7. Is that good? Yeah, that's all right. I don't know. I think just playing stats is just not that good enough anymore, and it's tough to draw enough spells by turn 3 for this to be a strong tempo drop. So you might have a pretty nice Brainstormer from time to time, but I think the average Brainstormer on curve, when it really matters, is going to be pretty awful. So I think this card actually is pretty bad. Bulldozer, 9 mana 9/7 Divine Shield Mech. It's basically an upsized Force Tank Max. And you may not know this, but Force Tank Max was an extremely good arena card. And the reason it was an extremely good arena card is because at that point in the game, there weren't that many ways to break a Divine Shield, and a typical arena deck needed 2 to 6 big guys. The reason Force Tank Max was really good was because it was bigger than the other big guys. So you would just trade 2 for 1. You wouldn't have to have 2 big guys. Instead, you'd have 1 Force Tank Max, and you'd have better curve, better consistency otherwise. That doesn't apply to Bulldozer right now because Arena is different. Arena offers a lot of removal options and a lot of ways to break Divine Shields. So I don't think this card is anywhere near the power level of Force Tank Max, but it's interesting to be reminded of the past seeing a card like this regardless. Cloak Scale Chemist. It's a 2-mana 1/2 stealth with Divine Shield. If this was a mech, I would lose my mind. It is not a mech, so it's kind of crap. This is a bit of a pack filler, but multiple effect cards, they typically have their day in Brawl, Arena, maybe some odd free-to-play decks, so I don't mind it that much. Crazed Chemist is a new rogue minion. It's a common slot, so this should be pretty effective in some budget rogue decks. Comboing 4 attack on something is no joke. We often see rogues have a lot of small minions. If you're trading like a 1/1 with +4 attack into like a 4-drop or a 5-drop of your opponent, you're getting crazy tempo out of that. So it's an extremely good tempo card. We don't know if just the tempo rogue deck will work, but most of the tempo rogue decks that have worked in the past are odd rogue, and it's an odd card. It might not see too much play because it does compete with other good 5-drops in Constructed, and tempo rogue might not get the upper hand on tempo against mech decks. So a lot of unknowns there, but what I can say with certainty is that this card is going to push rogue in Arena to new heights. It's an extremely powerful Arena card. Damaged Stegodon, 6 mana, 5/12 taunt. Oh my god. Oh, it hits itself for 6 damage. So it's a mech. It's good if you can heal it up and stuff, and you don't have to be a priest to do that. So, maybe it's better than we think. Fairly large taunt minions and mechs now. That's probably alright. I just don't think it's constructed level, but who knows. Ectomancy. This is a pretty interesting Warlock card here. It's a spell that copies all the demons you control. So things that you control basically means the crap you got on the board. All right. So if you have like a couple of really fat demons on the board and you play Ectomancy, you get a copy of each of those fat demons on the board. So I think that's actually pretty good. A lot of demons right now are very sticky, but they're largely control-based ones. But I do also think that Warlock has the space in that deck for a card like this, if you're playing control at least, because Control Warlock cards are good enough that you don't need the whole list. You don't need like double Nether, double Hellfire, double Defile, double all that other crap. You just don't need it. So you can maybe sacrifice one of those board clears or one of the other cards to get a huge board swing turn once you get some of your demons established. We also have Electrorite. Electrorite is a kind of interesting little minion here. It's a 3-mana 3/3, and if you're holding a spell that costs 5 or more, it gets +1/+1. Now, 3-mana 4/4s are actually not outdated yet. We had 3-mana 4/4s in Goblin vs. Gnomes for the first time, and here we are years later, and they're still actually relevant. They are, because most powerful 3-cost cards at the best have 3-mana 3/4 in stats, and they will get basically traded into easily by 3-mana 4/4s. However, how can you really play a deck that takes advantage of tempo if you have enough 5-cost or greater spells? It just doesn't make sense. Like, you can't play a tempo deck and have multiple 5-mana cost spells to the point where it's consistently a 3-mana 4/4. So I think it's a good card. It just has serious consistency issues to a point where it's probably not that good anymore. Elementary Reaction is a new Shaman card. You draw a card and you copy it if you played an Elemental last turn. So the Elemental thing, it's still going on. We still see some Elemental synergy. I like the card, but I just don't know how good it really is. I don't even know if it's better than cards like, I don't know, Farsight. So it's okay. I'm probably going to have some fun in Arena. I'm sure I'm going to have some kind of highlight where I'm just going to copy some ridiculous legendary. But all in all, we're not going to see this in Constructed. Glowstone Technician, perhaps we might, however. It's a 6-mana 3/4. It gives all your minions in your hand +2/+2. So this card just looks really good to me at face value, but you always have to remind yourself that you might not have a very big hand when you're playing a 6-drop. Yeah. So it's going to be in a very specific deck, but the effect is very powerful. So this is one of the cards that I like. This is one of the cards that it's kind of like challenging me to try to make it work. So I really like it. I really like it. But I think this card kind of sucks. Well, it's going to be difficult to find a good position for the Glowstone Technician. I don't think it sucks. It's just going to be a real challenge. Goblin Bomb. So all those cards that summon Goblin Bomb, well, that's it. There you go. Apparently it's a card. I didn't think it was a card, but it showed up on Blizzard's list of cards in the upcoming expansion. So I have to assume it's a card. There you go. Is it a good card? Maybe. Maybe it's a good card because it's a 1-mana mech and it's not terrible. So if it's a 1-mana mech and it's not terrible, that means magnetize into that shit all day long, basically. Goblin Prank. It's a 2-cost spell that gives a friendly minion +3/+3 and rush, but it dies until end of turn. So it's an interesting card. It fights for board control. What is notable is that there are several cards with powerful death rattle effects introduced in this expansion, particularly for Hunter, and more so if you consider that there are some other synergies that allow you to double up your death rattles once again in Hunter. So I don't think it's as good of just a tempo push kind of zoo card as it is a support card to maintain some kind of board control while you play a death rattle themed Hunter deck. Holomancer, 5-mana 3/3. After your opponent plays a minion, summon a 1/1 copy of it. So this is just not good enough for Constructed, but I don't like this card because this card is going to be really good in Arena. It's a 5-cost card that just wins more. It's a win more card. I don't like win more cards, especially ones that are pointless for Constructed play, and I do feel largely that is the case. So I wish they reconsider a card like this, but whatever. Kaboom Bot. We got the 3-mana 2/2 Kaboom Bot here. The death rattle deals 4 damage to an enemy minion at random. It doesn't have like magnetic or anything like that, so it can be a challenge to make cards like these work. It's very similar to Volatile Elemental. Volatile Elemental is a average card in Arena, so yes, it's a mech, which makes it a lot better in this expansion, but there's a lot of mechs, and how much better is it than the other options? That we really have to ask these questions. Loose Specimen. Okay, it's a 5-mana 6/6, all right? It's a beast, and it kills your own stuff. Now, the funny thing is, if you have a lot of like Goblin Bombs and stuff, you actually kind of want to kill your own stuff. So this effect, particularly in this expansion, might be all right. It's just a 5-mana 6/6 at a core is not good enough to see play standalone. So the problem is not that the effect is negative. That negative effect you can turn easily into a positive. It's that the card just sucks. So the negative effect would have to be extremely positive for this card to see any play, and I don't see that happening. What I do see happening is Mecharoo. Mecharoo is a 1-mana 1/1 mech, and when it dies, you get another 1-mana 1/1 mech. So basically, this is the magnetic king of the universe of Hearthstone. Mecharoo, guys. Mecharoo. You might think this card is cute and stuff. I guarantee you, 1 week from now, you will find a special place in hell that you want to send this card to. This is going to be the birth of the magnetic demonic monster that's going to completely shit on you in like 3 or 4 turns from the mechanized aggro decks that we'll be seeing. Mecharoo, boys, Mecharoo. Microtech Controller, very similar. I think this card is very powerful. It's a 3-mana 2/1, and you get 2 1/1s. You get 3 minions in 1 card. You get good stats. That's 4/3 in stats overall. And you get 2 different mechs. So this is a really strong push on the board. We'll have to see just how the trading works. I still can't like wrap my head around the trading systems with magnetics because, I feel like at one point, one guy just ends up with a really big magnetic guy. But to get to that point, the small magnetic guys have to win you the board, right? So it's kind of a weird one. I think this card helps you get there, but I'm just not entirely sure. We have a Piloted Reaper. So it's basically Piloted Shredder, except, well, it it's more consistent, but sucks more. It's a 4 mana 4/3, much like the Shredder. It's a mech, much like the Shredder. It's got a Death Rattle that summons a 2-drop, much like the Shredder. However, instead of it being random and it being generated, it pulls the card from your hand. Pulling the card from your hand means you lose a card. So it'll have to be some really damn special 2-drop for this to be anywhere near the power level of Piloted Shredder. So I think it's really not all that good. Rocket Boots. Give a minion rush, draw a card. So it looks like crap, but I think it's great. Warrior cantrips, especially when you're trying to set up like some kind of late game, I have no cards left type of combo, they're great. I don't think these cards like broken or anything. It's just great. It's a great card. Rusty Recycler is a 5-cost 2/6 mech with Taunt and Lifesteal. So if we look at like this card versus some of the previous taunts, we have a 4 mana 2/6 taunt, which is like Beast. So you basically pay 1 more to get the lifesteal, and the mech tag is not really arguably, definitely better than any other tribe in the game right now. So this is a pretty good card. At least average, the lifesteal tag is quite rare in Hearthstone and quite valuable, in particular on taunt minions. Spark Drill, 6 mana, 5/1 rush, so basically kill a guy. It's a mech, and the Death Rattle adds 2 1/1 sparks with rush to your hand, which basically is kill more guys. This is the kill a bunch of guys guy. It might look pretty bad, it might look like it costs too much mana, and it really might. But the way that I see the magneticized mech demon dude versus the other magneticized giant mech dude, and they face off, and one of them wins, and one of them probably has about 5 health. If you have a card like this, you just kill it, and then you start developing your own mechs for the next turn, because you kill it, and then you play small mechs, and then you can magneticize on those on the following turn. So, like, it seems like it works, right? Like, if everyone's playing mech decks, it seems like this card would be pretty good. But at face value, it looks pretty bad. Sparks aren't mechs? Oh. Okay, that makes it a lot worse. I don't know. Sparks are elementals. Do we know that for sure? Oh. Okay, I may have screwed up a card. Spark Engine, 2-cost, 2/1 mech, and the battle cry adds a 1/1 spark with rush to your hand. So low tempo card, but high value. We'll see. Spring Rocket, 3-cost 2/1 mech that deals 2 damage. You can deal damage to anything you want. So if you're playing some kind of face deck, it's pretty decent. It's basically cartoon in mechanized form, and mechanized form is really good right now. So this is a pretty good card. We have Steel Rager. Steel Rager is the reason why I will no longer be able to play Hearthstone. We have a Rager that's a 5/1, but it costs 4 mana. Blizzard, this is unacceptable. Okay, the Hearthstone that I know and love, Ragers cost 3 mana. I'm not satisfied with this, okay? There's something wrong with this card. It's also pretty good, by the way. I think it's also notably good in Arena. In Arena, you often lack single target efficient removal cards, and 5 damage into a minion for 4 while also being a mech. It's actually very strong, surprisingly strong. So unlike the other Ragers, yes, it has an additional mana cost, but unlike the other Ragers, I think it'll actually see play, at least in Arena. It'll be a great Arena card. Topsy Turvy, 0-cost priest spell, swap a minion's attack and health. Seems pretty pointless, right? Well, there's a lot of spell synergy. There's a lot of minion targeting synergy. So no, I think this card can be on the tail end of some pretty savage priest combos, in fact. 0 mana spells are always going to be seriously considered when making combo decks, when making some cool, crazy crap. People are going to look at this card, and I think someone's going to find a way to use it. Toxicologist, 2 mana 2/2, give your weapon +1 attack. Nothing too crazy, better than some of the other weapon buff mechanics, but I have to ask myself, with all these mechs, how is a deck like Kingsbane Rogue going to survive? It's not. It's not, guys. So I wouldn't worry about it. 2-cost 2/4 mech that can only attack if you played a spell this turn. That is a pretty high requirement, I feel, if you're playing the mech tribe. So, you know, if you're playing a deck just filled with spells, yes, it's a 2 mana 2/4, but is that really good enough? Nah, I don't think so. I think it's on the weak side. Venomizer. Now, this card is some real deal shit right here. It's a 2-mana 2/2 Hunter mech with magnetic and poisonous. Okay, so I know a lot of you guys, maybe haven't seen too much of Arena, but 2 mana, 2 health, poisonous dude is a solid Arena card. It is great. It deals very well with a number of things. This is also a mech. So if this card did not have magnetic, I would say it's extremely good. However, it does have magnetic. So with magnetic, you can attach it to a whole number of savage comboed mechs and other things. And the one that really comes to mind is the 6-mana mech that at the end of turn deals 1 damage to everything else. So you can use magnetic on one guy or the other, right? 8-mana combo literally kills every single thing on the board that doesn't have a Divine Shield active. And hunters don't really have that much trouble with Divine Shields these days. Now we have Violet Haze. It's a rogue card. Add 2 Death Rattle cards to your hand. It costs 3 though, but Rogue has a lot of spell cheating, and because of that, Rogue always gets the short end of the stick on mana costs for spells, so this comes at no surprise to me. Overall, not really much to say about the card. It's just alright. And lastly, we have the Whirly Glider. It's a 2-mana 2/1 that summons a 0/2 Goblin Bomb. So it basically is 2 mana, 2/3 worth of stats, ping your opponent for 1 in the face, part mech. All that put together, I actually think it's alright. I think it's maybe a little bit on the weak side, again with so much mech competition, but I think in general, it's alright. There's so many mechs coming up in the expansion, guys. I think a lot of us that try to predict what decks are going to come up in the meta, we have a real challenge this time around, which is great. It means that when the expansion comes out, a lot of us are going to miss a lot of the powerful combos, a lot of the powerful decks, and it'll be on you guys to try them out, see what you get from your packs, and make something work. Let me know what you think about the cards. Let me know what you think about the Boomsday Project as a whole, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.